We made it, people. Only 5 episodes this time rather than 8 overall. Here we are, the penultimate episode, the final showdown of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Did it live up to expectations? I'm not quite sure it did, but I'm Dom the movie nerd.
I'm Chris, the TV nerd, and, I think we have a number of conflicting opinions on tonight's show, which always makes for a great conversation. So for the next hour and 15, this is the place to be to chat the penultimate episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Absolutely. Welcome back, gentlemen. It's the penultimate episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I completely forgot the name of the episode. Oh, wait, I remembered. It's Truth. Episode 5, Truth. We've got Nick Talks Flicks and Matt of Basic Entertainment here. Overall, Matt representing, continuing to do the Marvel fandom overall. And Nick, I haven't seen Nick in a minute.
Yeah, it's been
Chris
a while.
tells me he was on Shocktober with us. And
Yeah, you
and
were
it's
there.
good to have him back.
I would hope you
overall.
remember.
we did Dale and Tucker and Dale versus
Tucker
Evil.
and Dale versus Evil.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, man.
Oh
that
my
was a
God,
fun
that
one.
one was a blur. That one was a fun time. That was, oh my God, wow. Thank you for that, and apologies for that introduction overall. But guys, how you been? Good to have you on the chat. One of you, we know your deal. We know you've been on the chat before, but obviously you'll speak. Nick, what's going on, dude? How you been?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well, man. So, Nick, before we jump into this, because we know where Matt stands, the viewers know where Dom and I stand, but where have you been landing with your reviews, your takes, your opinions on the Falcon and Winter Soldier thus far?
Yeah, I guess the way that I view the show is I've been kind of taking a different approach because WandaVision was so disappointing to me. I felt like WandaVision set up for so many interesting things and completely just didn't care to answer those things. It felt just very unsatisfying to me. So for me, WandaVision kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. So I went into this show. Obviously, this show to me is huge because I love these characters. I'm a big fan of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. It's my favorite Marvel movie, and so I was really excited about that because I got vibes from the trailer for that, and that's what I've gotten. It's really been a lot of the same feelings that I got when I watched Winter Soldier for the first time. I really like the show. I think that there are things to me that maybe don't work. I thought episode 3 was a little slow. I don't really love exactly what they did with Zemo, even though there are fun moments with Zemo. I kind of wish that he was more kind of geared more towards being the villain because I thought that was going to be the route that they went. The Flag Smashers are not really well fleshed out yet. I still really think that there's a lot to them that I just don't really understand and things like that. But I do really love this show, and I think it's been able to hit on the mark of being able to be surprising without having to, completely try to set us up for failure in the way I've seen it, like with WandaVision. So I really enjoy the show, though. I really like it.
No, for sure. And guys, go follow both Matt and Nick here on YouTube at Nick Talks Flicks, at Basic Entertainment. Great content. They post all the time, so check them out. So, Dom, shall you take it away with the recap, right?
So, wow, we are on the recap section to begin this episode of our weekly recap show for episode 5, Truth, directed once again by Carrie Scogland and written by Delan Mousson. So, Sam and Bucky confront John Walker, who is going through one of those epic PTSD flashback moments that almost like every movie character goes through whenever they're experiencing PTSD, because that's one of the best ways that Hollywood knows how to portray that. They're like, you got to give up the shield, man. It's not right. You just used it. You just defamed it. You just defiled Captain America's property. How dare you continue to hold this sacrament of American culture? He says, no, I'm Captain America. He's fully giving in. He's going into his darker side. So they engage in an epic 3-way fight, possibly in contention for one of Marvel's greatest small lowdown action sequences And then it's followed by almost a full hour of nothing. Like, I'm sorry to say, people, I know this is the recap section, but goddamn, was there like nothing happened in this episode? So,
yeah.
Unfortunately, the fight ends with Sam and Bucky taking the shield and breaking John's arms, but not before he almost strangles Sam and tears the wings off of his wingsuit. How dare you? How do you know how many of those things he's gone through? Do you know how expensive they are? So, afterwards, Bucky manages to track down Zemo in Sokovia, or rather, as I pointed out, what's left of it as the sole statue that I'm assuming is covered in everyone's names. However, he pulls the ultimate switcheroo when Zemo thinks that he's going to shoot him, when in reality, he pours the bullets out of his hands and then turns them over to the Dora Milaje, who in turn say that they will bring him to the raft. But not before Bucky requests one more favor for them. Walker is put on trial and receives what's described as an other than honorable discharge, which I'm a little bit confused as to the terminology there, but okay, and is ultimately stripped of his role as Captain America. He then, of course, visits Lamar's parents and tells them that he is always there for them, but not before, and cover your ears, people, because the spoilers are happening a little earlier in this episode than I had anticipated. A surprise cameo from Julia Louis-Dreyfus, of all people, comes up to him after the trial as Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who is apparently a real character that served with Nick Fury in the comics. Chris said it right. What a name. Goddamn. Like, and as far as like inserting a legend into the Marvelverse, I'm like, cool, but I can't help but feel it was a little distracting overall. But she, of course, tells him that, of course, he's an ultimate servant of the U.S. government, and he did nothing wrong, right? He just smashed a guy's face in with his shield. That makes him the perfect recruit to whatever super secret underground organization she is a part of. Is she actually with Nick Fury, or is she operating her own seemingly sinister agenda? Wilson ends up leaving the damaged suit with Torres. Why did they bring that guy back? He's the worst. And visits Isaiah, who states his belief quite bluntly, due to specifically his treatment from the American government, that a black man cannot and should not be Captain America. Wilson returns home and helps finally fix the family boat, because let's face it, his sister was never going to sell that thing. Good God, who in their right mind would actually buy that boat? Like, just from like an economics sake overall. So, of course, and who turns up to help him fix it? Nothing other than Bucky, as well as, of course, assistance from several locals who know the Wilson family name. Could I potentially see a Wilson family mafia spin-off show from Marvel? No, let's not ask Marvel to actually be that creative overall.
I think they'd be good guys anyways, but
Sam and Bucky end up teaming up together in order to train with the Shield. They have a little heart-to-heart, a little moment that felt strangely like it was written by a CW writer. I'm going to have to do some research into this guy, because that dialogue was feeling a little bit too sappy and on the nose for me, even by Marvel standards. However, they agree to train with the Shield and move on from their pasts together, and then the ending montage sets up a whole bunch of stuff that seems to be going down in the next episode. The Flag Smashers plan their attack on a GRC conference and are joined by Batroc the Leaper, who has apparently been hired off the books by Sharon Carter, who is slowly more and more so revealing herself to, I assume, to be the power broker. And of course, in a surprising post-credits scene, we see John Walker reforging his own version of the Shield. Is this the birth of the U.S. agent?
I hope so.
Far more sinister. We'll have to tune in next week for the finale in order to find out. But with that being said, that's the recap section of this episode. And now we're moving on to positives and negatives, our overall thoughts with this episode. So, Chris, I'm going to toss it to you. What were your thoughts on episode 5, Truth?
Sure, yeah. So, you know, I've seen some people, not just you, say that they felt like a lot didn't happen, but I actually thought that this pace that I've now kind of seen the majority of, as I assume what will be next week is going to be the action-packed finale that we're all hoping it is. I really like the way the show is paced. You know, certainly I think some of it is a little on the nose. Some of it is a bit distracting. Like, I did agree with you. The Julia Louis-Dreyfus
Elaine from Seinfeld.
Yeah, while she was great, and I thought she was like convincing, it's hard to not see her in anything but like Veep or Seinfeld for me. And it's like, even with Veep, the few episodes I've watched, I'm like, oh, this is just Elaine. So I agree with that. But overall, man, and then I want to toss it over to Matt to get some of his takes on this.
I have a theory on Julia Louis-Dreyfus, but I'll save that for later.
Yeah, that'd be a good segment for like the look into the future.
It's gonna be great.
But, you know, so I actually really like where this show's going. While it's not a perfect show, I think that this is what I personally wanted from Phase 4. I wanted to answer some deeper questions with some of these characters that I hadn't seen too much of, who have been kind of like the side characters who are awesome and help save the day, but like we don't know too many personal things about them. So for the most part, like I'm on board. We'll get to the critiques, but I want to get Matt in the conversation. So Matt, dude, what was kind of like your initial thoughts, reaction to this episode, man?
I think this episode started out great. It had that, that action scene you got in the beginning. It was brutal. It was fun. It was great to see the, John Walker. I think John Walker is a great character. I think I've seen a lot of people bash him. No, he makes sense for the character that he's portraying. And Wyatt, what's his name? Wyatt Russell he's awesome in it. Yeah, he's awesome in the role.
Marvel lineage right there.
Pretty much, yeah. And the episode takes a kind of a slow pace. It's more of like an origin. This is still an origin type show, you want to say. And it kind of calls back to episode 1 and 2, which makes episode 1 and 2 feel like needed in some ways, because some people can just look past those episodes and be like, oh, episode 3 was fun and episode 4 we had this, and but episode 1 and 2 are really the anchors of the show. It kind of sets up a lot of stuff. And then you get the whole stuff with Isaiah Bradley and then Falcon, which was great. And it kind of, in a way, it answers my question about Falcon. Why did he not want the shield? And it was pretty much about how he connects to Isaiah Bradley, that he, it's not, there can't be a black man as Captain America, which is good. It is, kind of like that political, kind of, what's like a political, social commentary thing that they have going on. And it was fine. I finally got the answers from Falcon, wanting to give away the shield, because I was always asking myself what was the real reason why he didn't want the shield? It can't just because, oh, I think I'm doing the right thing. No, it's more than that. So we kind of find it out in this episode. That was great. And nothing too much happened. I feel like I will agree with Dom, but we still get some character development and progressing the story overall. And I just think if you really like, Bucky, if you love Bucky, if you love Falcon, if you love these characters, this, episode kind of helps you out a little bit more with these characters. And especially with Bucky, now he's smiling instead of always looking, mad and aggressive. And he's starting to get over him getting out of the shadow of Steve Rogers, kind of what Falcon was telling him. And that was great. I think that was much needed in this episode.
Interesting take, but thank you for agreeing with me overall. You know that I love when people agree with me overall. So now, Nick, what were your overall thoughts on this episode of The Falcon and Winter Soldier?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you guys are saying. Like, it is slower, but I liked it because it felt like the calm before the storm, because I really think that next week is going to be such a in-your-face type of episode. I agree with you, Matt. I love John Walker's character. I like the character arc as a whole. I know a lot of people are bashing the actor, unfortunately, and being completely horrible people by just messaging a guy who literally got the break of his life, and it's just ridiculous to me. The guy's playing a fictional character. Get over it. It's like, I mean, most of us would kill to have that position in life. But I really liked what they did with him. One thing I kind of forgot about with this episode, just because there's so much other stuff going on with Bucky and Sam. In my review when I recorded it, I haven't edited it and put it up on YouTube yet, but I forgot to mention that Zemo gets taken away by the Dora Milaje. Like, it's something that like happened. It felt like so quickly, and it was just like, all right, boom, we're moving on to the next thing. What I loved about this episode, though, I think the most out of anything, was that this was an episode that really showed that development into Sam becoming the next Captain America. Because what we got from the original Captain America is you learned about Steve Rogers' heart. You learned about what he was inside that made him so worthy to be Captain America. And that's what Sam is to a T. And I really feel like there's nobody else who could take on that shield and take on that responsibility than Sam. And it shows that in this episode with him, training, or, just being able to see his personality kind of coming to light, seeing his like home life with his sister and his nephews. I think that that's really amazing. And I also really love the fact that Bucky is basically okay with it. Bucky's like, I want you to be, Captain America, because that's what Steve wanted for you, because he knew best. And he wanted that solidification, so that way he knew that Steve actually really what he felt about Bucky was true about himself. So it's like, I really love that about this episode. I can't wait for next week. It wasn't a perfect episode by no means. Like, the Sharon Carter thing to me was just like, handled so poorly. Like she's on screen for a second, then boom, that's it. You're just like, what was that? Like, did that even need to be in there for this week? I mean, it kind of felt out of place.
It was there to set up the main villain plot for next week.
Yeah, it was just, but it was like, it was weird because I was like, that felt so out of place from everything that we got. And then you just have Sharon, like one little tiny scene that of Sharon Carter just being like, hey, I have a job for you. Boom. And then it's over. And you're just like, wait, what? Was she really just on screen? Like if you blink, you miss it pretty much. But I do really like this episode, and I'm looking forward to next week and seeing what they're going to do to conclude this series.
Yeah, so to add off of Nick's point there, I will admit that Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes' individual arcs throughout this entire show have been fantastic. I do kind of find it I do kind of like that, like they did a little bit of a switcheroo where the first half they made it seem like it was going to be Bucky's show and Sam kind of took a back seat, but then Sam like really came to play in some of these later episodes as far as how he dealt with Carly and everything, and I realized that I will give them credit for everything that they've done with Sam. They really have done right by that character. As far as this episode though, this was the definition of a Half-Blood Prince episode, and why? But what I mean by that, in order in comparison, is that I love the story and what the Half-Blood Prince sets up for the epic finale that came in Deathly Hallows. But as far as what actually happens in it, plot-wise, it's fine, I guess. But it's kind of long, it's kind of drawn out, and it feels like there's a lot of cool moments that could have been like the epicenter that end up kind of just getting skipped over for time purposes. Oh, Zemo, who is an awesome and refreshing addition. Oh, he's out. We're just gonna resolve that. That's the only reason why we brought in these other characters, to literally escort him back to jail. That's the purpose of the amazing badass Dora Milaje. You know, they managed to mix it in with the John Walker thing pretty well, but that is ultimately the purpose of the Dora Milaje in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? And I get it. And as far as kind of the whole, this being kind of like the emotional peak of Sam's arc, let's call it. Just having it be a simple conversation with Isaiah does make it feel a little cheap. I'm just saying. Like, I know this is Disney we're talking about, and I know that obviously they're not going to go, like, to that extra level of, like, putting him in, like, a really, like, crazy encounter where it's like, oh, no, what if Morgenthau had something else, like, of appeal for Sam overall, you know? Just as far as that goes. But, yeah. Those were kind of the moments that held this episode back, in particular also due to its length from being one of my favorite episodes. It also didn't help that after two, in my opinion, incredibly well packed together and action-filled episodes written, of course, brilliantly by Derek Kolstad. This kind of went back to being like a little, oh, this is once again for TV, and oh, we're back on the boat, and oh, we're helping to build it, and that's going to be like the symbol of our coming together overall. And then with like the shield practice, I feel like Luke said it best. With I love this comment. Hold on real quick. I gotta put that up. I mean, pretty much. But, I mean, that's exactly what Half-Blood Prince is. Pretty much. But I do love this comment that he made of can't get over Bucky and Sam essentially throwing a frisbee to each other as they talk. I mean, if that doesn't describe why Ultron was one of the best MCU villains, I have no idea what else will. But yeah, those are kind of like my initial thoughts on the episode. I understand that it definitely has a lot more to say deeper, and I will admit a large part of it is because John Walker, it feels like, once again, I will admit that with John Walker, this is probably the most amount of discipline they've ever actually applied to one of their characters, whether it be hero or villain. That wasn't just a quick, simple pat on the back or like no acknowledgement, or like just the villains get a super quick death and are forgotten about like minutes later. Like, that seems to be the only form of resolution that Marvel knows how to do. And this is like the most amount where it's like, oh my God, some people are like actually answering for their crimes, which is kind of cool. And as far as the John Walker thing, I don't know if this stage of Wyatt Russell's performance is probably the weakest, but only because it got the least amount of screen time. But I'm hoping that's the part that I'm most excited for, as far as seeing how like he's gonna clash with Sam and Bucky in the finale overall. But what are your guys' thoughts on that as far as all of that concerned? I know I just spewed a lot like I usually do.
No, I wanted to take it on the John Walker point, keep that train going. You know, I agree. This was, I think, the weakest of his performances so far. I think he's been really incredible, though. I think he's been a refreshing addition, not only for the performance and the way he sort of embodied this character whose ego gets swept up in the moment and whose role and the pressure of his job overtakes him. Even though he's a trained soldier, now he's wearing the Captain America costume, and that's a whole nother ball game. And so I thought they have really done a good job of adding with this series, and not just with that one specific moment, but with the John Walker arc, realism to the MCU. You know, like I said at the beginning of this thing, I had a feeling it was going to be tangible, more so you could reach out and actually shake Falcon's hand, shake Bucky's hand, like they exist. They're not larger than life, whereas I always felt like as awesome as it was, Iron Man, the Hulk, Spider-Man, all those guys, like in the Endgame and all that stuff, like it was just too grandiose to have this connection that I have with them now, where it's like, I could run into these guys, man. I could get the phone call to come and help repair the boat. Like, I really feel like they're doing a great job of making it so much more impactful by being so smaller scale and so personal. Because I think moments where you have sort of Falcon speaking with the super soldier who they threw away, I always forget his name.
Isaiah Bradley.
I thought that was just like a very brilliant moment, because for once it feels like these characters actually care about the issues they're talking about, because it's so close and so personal. Whereas in Endgame, all the drama and stuff, well, it's cool, and I think they're into it in the moment. It's a little silly and a little hard to believe when we start talking about time traveling 95 times. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's fun, but I wasn't expecting this element into the MCU, and I'm really glad it's here. And my fear is that it might not be here for long. Like, I hope this series isn't just a little time capsule bubble moment of this sort of depth that we're getting for the first time. But what's up, Stranger Boy? Good to see you, man. So, yeah, I mean, someone else jump in off that, man. Do you guys agree with me, disagree with me? Like, what's your take on all that? Sort of the drama.
Only thing I'll add is Isaiah Bradley, portrayed by the great Carl Lumley, also the voice of Martian Manhunter in Justice League, the animated show, the greatest DC animated show ever made. Matt, what were you saying?
I was gonna say I agree, but I think it just fits these characters well. They're very kind of grounded type characters. I don't think it'll fit. Like, cosmic characters are so kind of tricky because you can't really relate to an alien, but you can relate to a guy who's dealt with like PTSD. I mean, you can't really. I mean, we've never been in the military or anything like that. We don't experience that, but that is a real life type of trauma that people go through. So that's a real kind of grounded stuff. But you can't relate to stuff like that. There is some characters out there I wish they can kind of feel more, just a bit more grounded, but they don't want to go in direction for those type of characters, which is fine. But we're getting it here. That's fine. But I would love for them to continue on with. There's a lot of more grounded characters out there that they could continue on with this. Hopefully they can. But I think it's proven that they can. They just will they? It's more of that, because MCU they could do anything they want. Let's face it. They have a guy Kevin Feige he knows the playbook of these characters. He knows it well. Disney has the money. They could do anything they want. It's just will they? That's the biggest question. I think. Yeah.
I think that's a great question. So let me ask you guys this: do you think that this show, now that we're pretty much close to the end, I mean, we're as close to the end as we've ever been, do you guys think that this show's been received better than WandaVision? I think WandaVision was a bigger pop culture moment, but do you guys think this show is going to warrant them taking more of this realistic route that it seems to be that we all agree on? And if I'm speaking for anyone there wrongly, correct me, but like, what do you guys think about all that?
I think yes and no. It's weird. I know that's not the answer you're looking for. I feel like there's a lot of people that liked WandaVision because it felt so fictional. And that sometimes that's the way things are. Like, I know, I love Star Wars. Star Wars, to me, it's my favorite thing on the earth, but like, Star Wars doesn't feel real. And that's what I love about it. It's like, I can just escape, go into my own little world, visit these characters that I love. But I also think that a lot of people do receive this show better because, like I kind of said, this show, it gives you those surprising moments that leave you on the edge. And they don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily feel like they like dangling it out there. Like, I remember the first episode of watching this show and you get John Walker's Captain America. I was just like, what? Like, what? And then you get, come by, episode 4 last week when he ends up killing, beheading this super soldier, and just going absolutely crazy. I was just like, what? Like, those are surprising things that happen in this show, but they never felt like that they were just doing it as something that was hokey and something that was just like, oh, let's just do this for the moment just to kind of appease people. That's what WandaVision just felt like. It was pandering to one side of the fandom. And then anytime that you wanted those answers for stuff, it ripped it away. And it was just like, no, sorry, this is about Wanda dealing with her grief. And I'm going to be honest. Like, I agree with you guys. Like, I actually like the show more because I feel like I can relate to Bucky and Sam. I couldn't relate to Wanda. I couldn't relate to Vision. I mean, Vision is an android. I I love Vision, don't get me wrong, but I never really cared that much about an android. Like, it's one of those things where I feel like the show is getting good reception by people who are going in understanding that this isn't going to be WandaVision. This is going to be a lot more grounded. It's going to be a lot more real. It's going to have those important things happening around it that are happening in our world today that we see. And so, yes, but also no, because I also feel like, people want the fictional side of the story and they like the kind of small story that doesn't really have any like room potentially to grow from this. Like, I don't know. That's just the way I look at it. Like I see both sides of the coin, but I'm kind of leaning more towards like, yes, I think people will receive this show better.
Totally. That's why I posed the question, because I knew it wasn't going to be an easy one to answer. Because I'm with you. There's parts that I agree and parts that I'm like, yeah. So it's a little bit of a yes and a no. But Matt, what were you going to say, man?
I think it comes to taste. I think some people, it really comes down to taste. You rather like your, grounded, more, to the earth. You can shake their hand like you talked about, Chris. Type characters, or do you like something more fictional? Let's be honest, guys. WandaVision, even though the execution was kind of lazy and poor, it was the most creative and ambitious Marvel thing that Marvel has ever put out. So I give it that, right? But this is more safe. Even though we talked about last time how it's not breaking the mold as an action genre. It's still playing it. It's like you guys talked about it. But it's still, that's a formula that still works, and it's still like it never ceases to like disappoint me. So you know what I'm saying, I'd rather go with that. It's more safer. WandaVision was like too ambitious for Marvel. Like they couldn't handle that for some odd reason. They just
I feel that. Actually.
Well, the interesting thing to keep in mind about that is, and this is always why I love the benefit of hindsight, is the fact that this show, Falcon and Winter Soldier, was supposed to come out first. WandaVision was supposed to be second overall, and I'm still convinced that they filmed more episodes of WandaVision in order to put in some, for lack of a better word, filler episodes in the middle. I wouldn't be surprised if, not the Evan Peters one, probably not. But it wouldn't surprise me if there were a lot of subplots for that show that were saved for other shows that were building out, like the whole Monica Rambeau thing and how that ends up being a spinoff for Captain Marvel. That's weird, but that might work after a second thing, because Falcon and Winter Soldier, with the exception of Black Panther, is pretty isolated from the rest of the Marvelverse. But what I do give them credit for overall is how they're continuing to interlace just like kind of everything in the Marvel universe, because that's something that I always wanted from the Netflix shows when we had them, and then they did it and it sucked, because it was the Defenders. So I kind of love that Marvel is doing that in their own little ways now. Like, I was annoyed at first when WandaVision didn't build towards the X-Men like I thought it was going to, because I thought the opportunity was right there. But the fact that it was tied in with Doctor Strange and then unintentionally built up to Captain Marvel, and then we know there's going to be a lot more crossovers going forward, I'm like, okay, this is like kind of like the interesting world building that Marvel's always been good at, right? And I know I've always talked about that in the past, about how they may seem to be a little bit too concerned with that, right? But as far as the grounded stuff, right, if we're calling this the grounded sector of Captain Marvel, right, out of like the kind of the multiple sectors floating out there, right, this is easily the most isolated from the rest of the stuff, and it makes sense for it to be the most isolated from the rest of the stuff, because as far as like fighting space aliens go, it only helps when you're surrounded by people like the Wakandans, like the Hulk, like the Hulkbuster, like Doctor Strange, like Thor, all at once, But like when you're dealing with like just basic terrorism threats, you want to make that as grounded as possible. You want to like keep people invested. So by nature of that story, of course, that's going to seem more relatable. But again, Marvel's ability, we'll call it, has always been to maintain that seemingly consistent, called by a lot of people flat, in my opinion, yes, a little bit as well, tone across all of and sharp wit, well, wit in this case, across all of their properties universally. And that's what always keeps their films in line. It's what allows us to go from something like Civil War to something like Guardians Volume 2 and Thor Ragnarok, and then back to something like Infinity War and Endgame, while still having Ant-Man and the Wasp plucked right in the middle there. That's the power, and that's the beauty of Marvel, is that they can constantly pivot and shift like this. Now, while WandaVision was certainly a vastly different direction for them, I still think that it kind of added this kind of new distinct direction. And I think that what I've seen in Marvel previously is that certain things that started off that I didn't like end up evolving into some things that I actually really, really ended up enjoying. And I'm hoping that if WandaVision can pivot that way into Doctor Strange, you know, if we're talking about other future properties, how Loki seems to be like continuing like the goofy off-kilter nature of Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor Ragnarok, which is what I'm hoping it goes in, you know? This is maintaining the grounded tone, this show, very, very well overall, I would say. It's just my problems with this episode. Like I said, it's mostly just the pace and the toning overall. I will admit, I fell victim to it. I've watched hour-long episodes. I've been watching back-to-back episodes of The Sopranos for the last, like, year now, as I'm watching the show episode to episode. And I would take any episode of The Sopranos. The season 4 finale of The Sopranos was an hour and 15 minutes, and that was, like, an independent film compared to how much of a slog this episode felt like. This was the worst case of bad penultimate stretching out until the finale mixed with quick setups for the finale. You know, it's the it's the meaning of the worst of the worst as far as television writing goes, and it feels like such a dip, especially considering that the last 2 episodes were written by an accomplished film writer, not just a film writer, but an action film writer at that. You know, that in particular makes this feel like an especially step down from a craft standpoint only, keep in mind.
No, I agree with all that, because while I complimented the overall pace of the show, I do think there's something I've observed with this whole streaming show where there isn't that sort of network demand to fill either the half-hour spot or the hour spot, where you do allow the creators to get more creative and give them more leeway. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And honestly, I prefer that. Like, I'm not saying change that, but I do think sometimes, you know, the studio system does get it right when they say, like, hey, man, I love what you're doing, but can't you see it drags on a little too long? Like, we need to fit this time spot. So then it forces the creator to go back and productively sort of look at, okay, how can I keep what I'm trying to say, but also get to the action quicker, get to the climax of the story quicker? Because, like, we only hear about the horror stories, right? We only hear about the Snyder cuts or the Ayer cuts or the Terminator 2s, right? We don't hear about, like, you know, the Event Horizons. We don't hear about, like, the successful mergers that sort of being pushed for time actually lead to some of our favorite movies. So I think there's something to be said there, because overall I love the pace of this show. I think the grounded nature with how they're sort of playing this out, making it so tangible, right? You could reach out and high five Falcon, man. Like, you don't feel that way about Iron Man, but yeah, I do think it suffers a little bit from that. And what I mean by that, Dom, is like he feels like a human, where Iron Man feels like this larger than life figure, Jeff Bezos type guy who I would never be in the room with, but I could be in the same place with the Falcon. You know, I could get that call if I live a county away and go help him fix his boat, right? I could be there. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you guys think about, like, sort of the pace while we're, I guess, sort of into the more negative areas?
I was going to say, because I've been kind of thinking about this as you guys were talking, and, like, I feel like from what we've seen so far, I mean, granted, it's only been 2 shows that the MCU's done. It feels like, number one, they have no idea what should happen in television shows in terms of setting up certain things. It just feels very amateurish. And what I mean by that is, like, even the villain, because I really don't see Carly, sorry. I don't see Carly and the Flag Smashers really being the villain in this show. I think that there's going to be some type of villain introduced in the final episode of this season. And I think that that's a big problem, because WandaVision did the exact same thing. It was like, oh, let's have all of this set up with, you know, what's going on. We don't really know. This is WandaVision. And then it's like, oh, let's just throw in Agatha Harkness, like, kind of towards the end. And it's like, I don't like that. It almost feels like, I don't know if it's a TV problem or if it's just a Marvel issue, because I feel like Marvel knows now that they will never replicate what Thanos was. They'll never replicate the success of Avengers Infinity War. And so now they're just like, you know what? It doesn't really matter if we build on any development for our future villains moving forward, because these villains might probably never show up again. I think Agatha Harkness might show up maybe 15 minutes in Doctor Strange 2. You know, maybe John Walker is in, like, another movie somewhere down the line. But, like, it just feels like they don't really care to set up their central villains of the story. And the Flag Smashers don't feel like the central villain, because, you know, like what Sam says,
a distraction.
Yeah, exactly. Like Sam says, like, I agree with your point. You're just going about it the wrong way. And that's really all that it is. It's just like, it's almost like trying to do too much with too little time, I think, is the big problem that Marvel has with the 2 series that they have. And I love this show, but it's been one of my problems with this show, just like WandaVision. And so I'm worried that it's going to be this way moving forward. And hopefully, like, when we get into, like, Moon Knight and some of these other characters who haven't been established yet in the MCU, I hope that they do a better job of actually like bringing about the villains of these shows. And I feel like they probably will. But yeah, I in terms of like the pacing, that's my biggest problem is it's just like they get to things, I think, a little too slow. Instead, they kind of fill things out with stuff that maybe isn't needed. Like we didn't really need to see them completely fix the boat. It was nice, but like we didn't need the entire montage of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think another reason, too, is just the inherent nature of TV and kind of the level that TV has gone to, where by the time Marvel's gone to TV, right, The Mandalorian was kind of like this new installment that kind of gave us hope. It was like, okay, so this new era of TV that we're entering, right, could have some promise. But the Marvel shows seemingly have not grasped onto, like, kind of the era of TV that we just departed. Like, even though Game of Thrones kind of shit the bed, like we're coming out of the era of Game of Thrones and Lost and Breaking Bad.
It's also
and even the first 2 seasons of debut shows that should have carried us into this new decade with Barry and Succession overall. Like, there was a precedent that has been set for TV on a craft level that already so much of the gluttony of shows that streaming has turned down couldn't even hit in their wildest dreams overall. And the fact that Disney is coming in and it feels like the only thing that is keeping them afloat craft-wise is their brand IP value. That hurts very much, you know? It hurts from a consumer level a little bit, and it kind of especially hurts for people on a crafts level, where it's like, again, to quote Chris, as he has said many times, you have all the resources in the world, and your move to TV seemed to signify a drastic change in your storytelling, so why does it seem like we're still getting kind of the same thing, just repackaged, and even worse, falling into easy TV tropes that are easy to avoid?
I would say I was just gonna add on when you said Mandalorian, like the big difference with Mandalorian in this show is that you have Dave Filoni working with Jon Favreau. So clearly you have a guy like Jon Favreau who hasn't really dipped into TV, but he brought on Dave Filoni who knows number one Star Wars and also knows the television format because he's been doing it for years with Clone Wars.
Good TV.
Exactly.
I can't believe it. It's an animated guy, but he knows how to make TV better than most of the people making TV right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they still haven't grasped it yet. I think Marvel is just they're gonna get you. They got somewhere that between some of these shows, they're gonna start figuring out how to do TV. It's just a matter of time.
Right.
This is
It's
just
a
the
matter of
first
time.
2 shows. Yeah.
My hope is that they hit it by the time they get to She-Hulk and Moon Knight, because those are the 2 shows. Those are the 2 shows. Because the structure of those 2 shows, right? The whole thing with these first couple shows is they also think they can be movies, right? WandaVision could have been better off as a movie. This show, as much as I've enjoyed it, would have been better off as a movie. You could say that about a majority of the shows coming out this year, with the exception of Miss Marvel, depending on how they do it, and What If. Right? But next year, we're going to start to get into some more shows that might situate themselves better to television storytelling. And I'm hoping that She-Hulk and Moon Knight are the 2 that do that, because Moon Knight, they can literally just replicate what they did with Daredevil, only introduce a magical element. And She-Hulk is a legal drama for the most part, but with like a whole kind of after effect. So you can kind of get like that werewolf, almost nature, like double life nature that the character of Jennifer Walters could go through, which Tatiana Maslany will lend herself perfectly to, as well as having an incredible legal drama. So you get the best of all worlds as far as television storytelling goes. Chris, what were you going to say?
I was going to say with Moon Knight, I've read some of that, some of like the, I guess, more renowned runs. I think if they stick like to the source material, or at least try and capture the feel of that character the way that he's been written in a few of the different writers I've read, I think it will translate the TV, sort of like the week-to-week special type thing. And so what I was going to say is, like, just to clarify my point a little bit, because like the only exception to the rule of what Dom quoted me saying is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier so far. Because while there is some fat and some sort of, I'd say, missteps, and I do also agree with the overall sentiment of, yeah, this probably could have been a pretty dope 2.5-hour movie. I do think, though, for the first time, though, talking all Disney right now on the streaming that I've watched, not just Marvel, you know, Mandalorian 2 seasons, WandaVision, now this, for the first time, at least it feels like there's a unique voice shining through, but then there's still some maybe naivete, if that's how you say that word correctly, when it comes to producing TV of this caliber after doing film for so long. And that's not bad, because at least I have hope for the first time in a while of an MCU series. Now, I wanted to ask you guys this, because I personally think you could have done the movie route for WandaVision, but I also think if it wasn't a limited series and we had more time to explore and layer this thing out, maybe it could have recovered after a first season that was a little rocky. Do you guys think they're kind of hurting themselves, putting themselves in a corner by announcing these series as these definitive limited runs? you know, do you think they're sort of limiting potential creativity and maybe not accounting for all of the different sort of mishaps that could go with the way the audience receives it? Because you could recover a bad show and have an amazing show could recover from a terrible first season. We've seen it happen. What's your guys' take
seasons,
on that?
Friday Night Lights season 2 much?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You think the limited series sort of thing hurts this MCU universe we're getting on the small screen?
I think it's kind of hard when we're getting these big actors telling them to be in a limited series and being like, okay, you're just gonna be in one limited series. We can't do a whole season. I can't see.
Well, can't because they can't afford them.
Yeah, you can't afford them. I can't see Oscar Isaac being like, okay, I'm fine of just doing a whole series of shows, right? A whole series, season 1, 2, 3 of Moon Knight. Eventually, he's gonna pop up in the big screen because that's where you sign up a big name actor for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of tricky. I think some shows like like She-Hulk, I don't know, like that could be a series where like you get a season 1 and 2 or 3, but it's kind of hard because they want to implement these characters into their movies. So yeah, it's tricky with this one.
I think the nice thing is I think the only right now, based on everything we know of who's coming on, portraying new characters, the only one that I really think, and I don't really know the actress at all, so forgive me if I'm misstepping here, but I really think Miss Marvel could be set up for it to potentially be seasons, and then she just kind of pops up in the movies every now and then.
I would be down with that, honestly.
Just because the actress is relatively young. I've seen her before. I've seen her in like something else.
Amani Valley.
Yeah,
Vella.
Yeah.
Vella.
I've seen her in something else before. I thought she was really good. The thing I saw her in was very limited, so I can't really say 100%. But I trust Marvel with their casting decisions, and I think that character might work better. Maybe being more of a series type of character. And the only reason is because I feel like even though there are a lot of comic book fans and they know the difference, I do really feel like Marvel might have an issue with having both a Captain Marvel and a Miss Marvel and people being like, well, what's the difference?
That definitely is going to create a little bit of a Captain Marvel across Marvel and DC.
It's almost like WB with all the different Batmans that they have. It's like let's have Robert Pattinson. We're going to bring back Michael Keaton.
And the funniest part is that the funniest part is that Marvel's already going to have that problem. I mean, maybe people won't notice when they have one of the Eternals being played by an actress who was already played a different character in Captain Marvel. So they're already technically in that boat. So,
damn, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, Gemma Chan, who portrayed, I forget her character's name, but she was the Sniper Kree in Captain Marvel, is playing an Eternal named Cersei in the Eternals.
Damn, okay. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess.
She was also the voice of the badass chick with half her head shaved, the bad girl in Raya and the Last Dragon.
Yeah.
She was badass.
She's been making the rounds as far as Disney goes. But yeah, so as far as that goes,
what was your take on that? The whole limited series versus having them continue?
I think it's kind of them trying to get with the times and them trying to be like kind of just capture the moment as far as kind of the social media Twitter sphere and kind of just like get as much of a diverse Marvel palette in with 1 year as possible as far as that goes. And this seems to be the best strategy as far as how to do it, because obviously Disney takes its lessons from, the things that work and does not take the lessons from the things that don't work. So it's very clear that they're trying to copy a lot of what has made Netflix work as well with kind of the limited series model. The limited series, as I've said before, has always kind of provided the outlet to kind of tell the stories that movies cannot. Maybe there's a little bit too much material that you could fit into a movie, so it gives creators all these different outlets to experiment on. I think HBO and Showtime have done this the best overall, but the problem is now we're doing the kind of the overall movement of miniseries, let's say, not just not just on Disney, is moving towards the territory that movie went, which is okay, we did kind of the auteur-driven work, which was the late 2000s and early 2010s. Now we're moving into more genre-based stuff on TV, given the different kind of avenues that they can do. And that's cool, but again, it also does start to beg the question, which I know I have brought up on the show before, starting to gauge out story material and figuring out how much story is necessary for a certain product. I know that, like, every artist will, like, gasp at that and, like, die from their overinflated egos being completely popped in the sense of, oh no, our art is being restricted. But at the very least, I feel like as far as the consumer goes, because this still is a consumer-driven, model, I definitely think that is something that is very much necessary as far as gauging it out. Like, okay, what story is going to work well as a 2-hour movie? What story is going to work well as a limited series? What story could lend itself to a long run, you know? And the answers are going to be subjective. That's why it would be so difficult, because it would be different for every single one. But I truly believe, specifically with Disney, that is something that needs to be considered.
I think I was going to say, here's something to think about. Yes, I think there's only going to be one Falcon and Winter Soldier series. I don't think there's going to be a season 2. But that doesn't mean that they can't bring these characters back, have another season of a different show called Captain America and the White Wolf.
I was thinking about that too.
I really think that we're setting that up, dude.
They got it, people.
I think they're setting that up.
He nailed it. But what have we said? What have we said Marvel's the best at, Chris? Marketing.
Yeah, they do a good job of it for sure. No, that's a great point, man. I would like that.
Yeah.
I hope we go down that path.
I just feel like it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to see new Captain America being the life for better words, the minor leagues.
Because the characters that we
movies are
loving,
the major leagues.
Yeah, because the characters that we grew up loving started in the era where movies were actually made, not television shows.
Yeah, and it's I don't know, it was kind of like there's still sidekicks. I'm still looking at them as sidekicks. I know they're kind of getting out of the shadow and stuff. It's still going to take a while for Sam Wilson to be my new Captain America, which I'm fine with. I'm cool with it. But like him to have a Disney Plus series, it's not gonna make it feel like he's the main focus moving forward with these this franchise. So
that's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that's like, unless anyone else has anything to say, I'm pretty sure that's everything that we have to say about positives and negatives for this episode overall. So now we're gonna move into the MVP section. Nick, are you familiar with how this works?
No.
So basically, you pick an element of the show, a character, an actor, a director, behind the scenes thing. You could even go with Disney, the evil mouse itself, if you wanted to, basically as your MVP for the show. I'm still waiting for Disney to capitalize that and make an evil Mickey show. It would be insane. It would be the most watched cartoon
I'd watch
ever.
it.
I'd watch the shit out of that. Oh my god. They seem to be making these things for people our age anyways. So so that is who you pick. Okay. So we've kind of all gone in succession before, but I mean you're new here as far as having not been on in a while. So what is your MVP for this episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier, Nick?
I'm gonna go with Sam. I think Sam to me is the MVP of this episode. I think this episode, kind of like what was hinted at earlier, where we were talking about how the beginning of this series felt like it was kind of Bucky driven. This episode really kind of felt like it was Sam coming to his own. I've always been fascinated by his character. I've always really loved Sam. I think that he is, just as worthy as Steve Rogers. I mean, I can't say worthy, like more worthy, because I mean, Steve Rogers right now is still higher on the pedestal just because, we know Steve Rogers to be Captain America. But from what I've seen with what they're doing with Sam's character and the way that they've been able to portray his family life, him as a person, being able to show the montage of him just kind of training and really showing his worthiness to the role of Captain America, that to me really stood out more than anything else. And so that is why I'm giving Sam Wilson my MVP nod in this episode.
All right, moving on to Matt. Who is your MVP for this episode?
I was gonna go with Sam, and I think he could be my runner-up. But I'm gonna go with Isaiah Bradley. I think the actor is amazing as him. Delivers some great dialogue.
Is the actor's name.
Yeah, and he's great. That whole scene was great. A lot of depth added on again to the scene. It was kind of like a parallel to what's it called? Steve Rogers. Kind of like he was telling about the story, and then Steve Rogers, when he was welcomed back, they were cheering, but for him it was different. So it was great nod to that, and also to this whole kind of want to add on. This whole direction has been great for if you're a Captain America fan because they're putting so much respect on Steve Rogers and the parallels that came before, which is an awesome touch with this show.
Absolutely. Chris, who is your MVP of the episode?
Yeah, so for me it's twofold because they kind of go hand in hand. So it's the tone and the way that these characters play into it, specifically Wyatt Russell, because I've given, Sebastian Stan a nod so far. I've given Anthony Mackie a nod, and I think the performances in this show have just been absolutely amazing. And so I think it's important to give this nod to Wyatt Russell on this week in specific because of the nonsense he's dealing with in his personal life and people saying his performance was downgraded. I think he played the moment really well. I mean, This is a man who lived and died, metaphorically speaking, for his country, and now his country's killed him off. right in front of his own eyes, and he watched it happen. He witnessed the death of everything he loved in this episode. I mean, how else would you react? And for someone who, like we all were saying, is relatively off the street, I mean, I know, family and all that, but really hasn't had a chance to prove themselves on the screen at all, big or small. He really came in, man, and is with some big contenders, and he's in the ring holding his own. So yeah, the tone and the writing, really knowing these characters. But Dom, who's your MVP of the week?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that people who think that Wyatt Russell is bad are stupid, and I'll have no problem saying that because they are. And I
Yeah,
think
they
that,
are.
yeah, I don't care. And I think the idea of people still sending death threats to actors is overrated, and I think
So stupid.
that needs to start being written up as a criminal offense. I really do. I think that the amount of this is gone too far, and I think that it is starting to become like to a ridiculously overbearing amount. And the fact that there are people that think that it's cool to kind of just follow along with that trend is not okay on a ton of different levels. But as much as I do love Wyatt Russell and his performance as John Walker, and I still stand by my statement from last week that he is the best thing to have happened to the MCU as far as just creating kind of that incredibly layered protagonist that we seem to have been seeing in the wake of Killmonger and Thanos that I didn't think that Marvel was going to continue with after what Agatha Harkness turned out to be. But I'm really, really appreciative to see the type of antagonist in the show, especially since I didn't think that we were going to kind of get him as the main antagonist role. I thought that was going to be more of a Zemo role. But my MVP for this week are the action stunt coordinators that arranged that first fight between those first three because, god damn, did you see that thing? Holy shit.
Okay.
Even by John Wick standards, that shit was amazing. Like, I kind of knew that it was going to go there in the episode, but I thought it was going to be like the emotional climax of the episode. I didn't realize it was going to be the opening act. Like, they got to that shit quick. And in hindsight, it kind of did tank the episode because I could already imagine 15 different ways in which this episode would have been better if that was the focus of the episode. Sam and Bucky's quest to get the shield back from John Walker, and how that would have been automatically more engaging because they're actually doing stuff and in the middle of action, to possibly prevent John Walker from hurting other people in his kind of post, murderous rage in a way. So it still does kind of suck that the story went the way it did, but for that opening fight to be what it was, goddamn, bravo is all I have to say. That was the most intense, like, thrill-filled, awesome fight that I've seen from Marvel since the fights in, I'll say Winter Soldier, because even Civil War, as good as those fights are, they still seem tame to Winter Soldier. So that's my MVP of the episode.
I feel that, man, so hard. And I do got to say, I think we are, only looked worse as a society by sending actors death threats. Like, there's bigger issues.
That's
that
gotta stop.
Seriously.
The Star Wars thing was never called for. I don't care how many people hated that movie. That was never called for. And remind me, did it happen on Game of Thrones? Or no, it didn't happen on Game of Thrones. It happened on something else.
Your bag.
It happened on something else. It wasn't just Kelly Marie Tran. It was somebody else.
Yeah.
That I'm currently drawing a blank on.
It was another big franchise. I know that.
Yeah.
Or like a big thing.
But
Maybe it was
I
Harry
can't
Potter or something.
No, it wasn't Harry Potter.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It wasn't The
all
Hobbit.
all I'll say is that honestly, if somebody's watching and you're one of these people, it's a freaking fictional show that doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter. Even if next week the show drops the ball and it's not good, guess what? We all can return to our lives and know that
it's just a TV show.
Life moves on. Yes, it's a TV show. And again, this was Wyatt Russell's break of his life, man. Like, let him enjoy this moment. And he's a great dude.
Yeah, he's been on a little bit of an uptick for the last couple of years. I still think that for me, his breakout was 22 Jump Street. I think he's the best. He is one of the best parts about that movie. He is actually like really, really good in that. And then just like how it's interesting how he kind of like tried to differentiate himself from his dad so much throughout his early career, and then he finally said, "No, fuck it, I'm just gonna go for like everything that made my dad great." But like he channels like this inner darkness that kind of Kurt Russell never really had, and it works so well in his favor, specifically for this part overall.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure.
So moving on, we have the last section, which is connections to the greater overall comic book universe and MCU, or in this case, MCU and comic book verse that inspired it. I fucked up the title. I don't care. So let's talk about the cameo, all right? Because that was, I would say, I think that is the one moment that everyone can agree, and I don't think it's the fault of the actors, but I have a working theory as to what ended up arranging this scene. Julia Louis-Dreyfus coming out of nowhere. Just being like, hey, I'm here. Y'all still remember me. I'm still relevant. And you're still going to respect me because I'm just going to talk like Elaine. But if she were, I'm just going to insert my character from Veep right into here. And I'm like, what? But I don't believe that the character from Veep was ever supposed to be menacing. I was at the point was that we weren't supposed to take her seriously, and I don't know. Like, am I weird here and thinking that like, is that just me? Like, so somebody else talk, please.
Yeah, I just think the celebrity is very hard to detach from in that moment, and I think it takes away from what I thought was a really convincing, ominous performance on her part. I really, I was like, damn, okay, like she's really going after it. But then I just think of like them sitting at that diner in Seinfeld and just like,
or them
talking
sitting at
about,
the table
like,
reads behind the scenes and Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah. It's that's really the only issue there, and it sucks when an actor gets that big and that happens to them, but it does happen, and I think it's worth mentioning. But I'm actually I think she could play sort of a very creepy, sinister role like that, and I think I want to see where this goes. This makes me, if anything, really want that Captain America and the White Wolf show more than ever.
Yeah,
so
right.
yeah, but what'd you guys think about her cameo?
I thought it was kind of out of nowhere. Listen, I'm gonna keep you honest. Like, it was just out of nowhere. It was kind of part of the
Quite
pacing
literally.
problem. Yeah, it just like it came after that scene with John, and I was kind of like, yeah, it's cool. She's supposed to be Madam Hydra, and it's gonna set up all Hydra stuff. But it was just, I don't know. I didn't feel anything for it. To be honest with you, it's great to see her, in the MCU, and it looks like MCU is getting everyone they can. But I don't know. It just kind of hurt this episode overall. Kind of like that scene, and kind of Nick talked about it with the Sharon Carter, the power broker scene, just came out of nowhere. The editing was kind of a bit off on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it weird, like, because the way that they introduce her character is you see her feet first. It's like somebody walking.
Yeah,
So it's gonna be a big reveal.
That was really
Yeah.
confusing.
I was expecting a big reveal. I was
I
like,
thought
who's this
Tarantino
going to be?
helped to do some
Yeah,
shot
that's what I was
design.
going to say. I was going to say, I think Tarantino was on set that day, and Tarantino's like, hey, you want to see something cool?
Tarantino has watched all the Marvel movies.
Yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
he's a Marvel fan. But
They used this reference in one of their movies.
yeah, it was weird though, because like I thought for sure it was going to be some type of big reveal. Like, is it going to be Natasha Romanoff? Like, what are they doing? Like, who is this person? Then they just pull up and it's Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and I was like, oh, I was like,
I thought it was going to be the latest
Okay.
Nick Fury recruit, where it's like Kobe Smulders is back, only it's the
Oh,
Skrull
yeah,
undercover.
yeah.
But that does bring up two working theories. So I just did a little bit of quick research on the character overall. So just a brief history about her. She was originally a fictional espionage agent who appeared as kind of one of Nick Fury's sidekicks overall. But I was looking over her biography, and I found two possible things that could link to the series overall. Because you know how Marvel likes to like pull bits and pieces from the comics and kind of mix and mesh them in order to form their own mythology, which is that in the Secret Invasion Marvel arc, it was revealed shortly after that a Skrull agent was posing as her in order to spy on Nick Fury. And obviously, since we know that they've kind of warped the Skrulls, could she potentially be another spy Skrull for Nick Fury in order to try and recruit John Walker, before kind of the powers that be, whatever other hidden powers. We know obviously that General Ross is still very much a presence in this universe, and I'm wondering if Nick Fury is still working to secretly undermine him. But another thing that I read is that in the Ultimate Marvel Comics, of which she was also a member, this is another possibility, she was the chairman of the Ox Group, which was the largest holding company in the world and also part of the secret Kratos Club, a group of industrial multimillionaires whose goal is to use their influence to ensure the right things get done no matter what. So secretly an Illuminati member? Who knows?
Or-
Could this eventually lead to the superheroes taking over the actual Illuminati that has been existing within the Marvel Universe, the MCU, this entire time?
or is she Mephisto?
I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done.
I guarantee everybody, like, it's so funny, like freaking WandaVision, man. It screwed everybody over now it's just like that's the meme, right? This person's Mephisto. This person's Mephisto. I mean, maybe she's Mephisto.
To be honest,
Maybe
I thought
she
Sharon
is.
Carter was Mephisto, but I was saving
Nah,
that.
she's the power broker. Like, well,
Yeah,
that's
she's the
not
power
a reveal
broker,
anymore,
totally.
right? Like,
Totally,
they basically
yeah,
all but
she
confirmed
totally
Sharon
is.
is the power broker,
Yeah,
right?
I guessed that when we saw her in episode, what was it, 3?
Yeah.
I actually said in my review of that video, I said my theory is that she's the power broker. She felt weird from what we knew her to be before. And then not only that, she also didn't feel like she was scared. It felt like more so that she knew everything that was going on and happening, and she was just using Bucky and Sam to try to get more information out of them.
She also
which
felt
is
annoyed.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like agitated, like you're messing with my business, so I could see that. But to be honest, I guess the only reason I think she's the power broker is because every time I log on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, it's all I see people say. So it's like one of those things where it's like, hey, marketing. You put it in someone's face enough times, they're going to believe it, whether it's true or not. And
it
it's
does
like,
indeed work.
so that's the annoying part. But, you know, there hasn't been as much of that for this show, thankfully. And I really appreciate it for that.
Yeah, because it
Which is
debuted
great.
when the Snyder Cut and Kong vs. Godzilla did, so it actually had a chance to like get some legs of its own. As far as I'm concerned, it did. The only thing that I'll add left to it as far as that goes, and I might actually jet out to use the bathroom because I really have to pee overall while you guys continue this discussion, because I do still want to bring up like one other theory. But the one thing that does kind of suck is I think they're doing kind of a shitty job to building up to the Thunderbolts, which we obviously know are coming down the line, you know? As far as like Zemo's back in jail, and we don't know what's going to happen with John Walker. When I thought that this show, again, far be it from me to leave, it's almost like Marvel is like going off on its own unintentional track as far as like, oh, we think we're intentionally building up to this, but we're not actually, because the building up is going to come off screen later on overall. So what are your guys' thoughts on kind of the Thunderbolts? And continue that discussion while I briefly, return.
Yeah, so yeah, okay. So I was gonna add to that actually. So they correct me if I'm wrong. They said Doom Malaje, one of them, AO was said, oh, we're gonna take him to the raft, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the raft is from Civil War, and that's where I don't know, Thunderbolt Ross is still keeping someone in there. I don't know if someone else is in there, some villain or some crap. But you can have that connection with Thunderbolt Ross and then Zemo, and then of course Ross can be Red Hulk. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. I don't know. I think it will be more interesting if they actually took them to Wakanda. And
Yeah, I kind of
like,
hate how Dom like put us with this terrible topic to talk about. Like, I don't have much to go off of here.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about what I think Matt was going to, which was Zemo, right? Is that where you were going, Matt?
yeah, I was going with Zemo because it would be so cool because we got the whole thing with the Doom Malaje. They want revenge over Zemo, but we already know that T'Challa has gotten kind of over that, kind of like, I'm not gonna let you die. You know, you're still more alive. We were put him in a situation that I understand, and it kind of sucks. You know, of course, now knowing that they might not continue the T'Challa character, it sucks that we might not get that progression of that story itself. I just think that's more interesting because if they play off the Raph and then Thunderbolt Ross, it's gonna be some kind of like head to head where they kind of agree to some ideals and then they break out of prison is something in that generic lines. I just think him going to Wakanda.
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, and I'm excited for it. Don't get me wrong. I am excited for it. I think Zemo, they set it up perfectly in a way where he's rich, he can fund the team, and they still have to set up some more characters overall and throughout this series and stuff. And show, I was kind of going to ask you guys this question: would you guys prefer Thunderbolts as a movie or a TV series?
TV series. Absolutely.
TV series, because they're gonna set up characters. It's gonna be like their own Avengers,
right? That could honestly work as far as like doing like the dark version of the Avengers. Yeah, it's just my only requirement will be that Thunderbolt Ross tries to form it at first, but then when he turns into the Red Hulk, it becomes like a disaster.
Yeah. You know what I think? It's one of those things where give me an ensemble in a TV show if we're not going to get individual movies to piece them together like they've trained us for with, the first three phases of the MCU. Because we clearly saw with Suicide Squad, just jumping right in like that is dangerous. While I do want to see the Ayer cut, not to be that guy, because I do think Warner Brothers is, if they're not the studio for studio interference, they're up there with like not doing it the right way. Like, we spoke about the right way earlier. They clearly represent the wrong way to do that. But so I think if you're going to do it like that, at least with the series, you can get to know the ensemble if written right. There's still a lot of danger there, of course. I mean, what was that sort of Netflix team up show that, came and went?
The Defenders.
That somehow did Sam's roommate from Transformers 2 worse.
And that show was crazy because we had multiple series with those characters beforehand, and it still was messy and crazy. So it's not like an easy, code to crack, but that's how I'd prefer to see it. But to kind of get back to the Zemo point of it all, I think that there are certain things that studios, executives, the corporate suits behind these projects do. They try things out, right? And so I think Zemo made such an impact on the zeitgeist with this series. They cut that hour-long dance video of him, for Christ's sake, on the Marvel YouTube channel, and it's got like 6 million views in like 2 weeks, and we really haven't seen him in so long. And for him to just pick up where he left off after years and feel so natural and fit right into this world, we might be looking at, I would hope a series of some sort of just focusing on him and sort of how he maybe escapes Wakanda. Like, I hope that we're not 100% locked in. Like, I hope there is some liquidity here where, they give us those fan service moments, but like, is there an ability to adjust the course because something so awesome is happening in the moment and the fans clearly want more? Like, if there's any effect I hope this show has, it's like getting more Zemo in some way, shape, or form.
We're
as
gonna
a
get more
substantial
Zemo.
role.
Yeah, we're
gonna get more
Zemo.
Yeah, I don't think
You're
this is the
100%
end.
right. That
But I want
hour-long
like a hefty role,
That hour-long cut of him dancing online is like, that's
Incredible.
absolute proof of that. And the fact that
insane.
exists, I just love. But also, a fun fact about Daniel Bruhl that has been circulated to the internet. Daniel Bruhl actually did the German dubbing of Lightning McQueen for the first Cars movie, which...
I love that
internet.
man so much. I've been in love with Daniel Bruhl ever since Inglourious Basterds.
Not to mention the fact that he's got his franchise now. Like now, as Baron Zemo, he's been in 2 Marvel properties, and he literally was just given like carte blanche to appear in the 3rd, arguably one of their most profitable. Right off the bat with Black Panther 2, which. I don't know. It certainly seems like he could have a part in that, But as far as the building up to the Thunderbolts, I definitely agree. It needs to be built up over time. I think it's a chance for them to finally kind of do right by the thing that they've been criticized a lot. Even though they seem to have really fixed their villains in Phase 3, they still, I think, have a little bit of ground to cover, especially after that, in my opinion, Agatha Harkness disaster. I think Loki's going to kind of churn the pot a little bit because that's the one where the villain is the actual, it's the most liked villain is the main character overall, so that helps. But I definitely think I have a bad feeling about some of their villains going forward, and I want them to kind of like, I want them to hit the highs of like the Killmongers and the Thanoses, and Zemo certainly is that guy overall, whatever role he ends up having later on.
For me, I've always
played... Oh, sorry, Nick.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, for me, my thing has always been I've never been worried about the villains per se with Marvel. It's more like the fact that they are the fake death universe. Everybody dies, but they come back.
Yeah,
that's true. And what I was going to say to Dom's point, and that's a great point about Zemo, is he really was a great, piece in misleading the audience. He really was the anti-hero in this episode. He kind of did as much good as he did bad, whereas, John Walker's clearly the villain now. So it's interesting, and you can explore that and tap into that in a way that I don't think the MCU has in depth like I want them to, and they've set up so much interesting just lore around this guy, and now we know he's a duke and he has all this money, and so he's kind of like a he's I don't know, he could be like their evil Batman. Like he could be their like Flashpoint Batman with the gun shooting people and shit. I
love it.
Well, the nice thing about Zemo too, that especially in this episode, is it shows that he's grown so much because when Bucky turns him over to the Dora Milaje, he just goes, "You gotta do what you gotta do." He honestly wasn't, and that was so surprising. I was like, wow, like he's become reasonable. A character. Yeah, he's reasonable and he's very likable. I liked him in Civil War, but I didn't really care that much because it didn't really feel like there was any reason to like him.
In Civil War. Yeah. And that mission was a little bit blinding.
Whereas
it was conflated with a lot of other stuff that was happening in that movie.
And this show, we get to know him as the person. And oh my gosh, is he one of the most charming individuals in the MCU, in my opinion. I want more of Zemo. Just like he's so good. He's so good in this show.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
For sure. Matt, do you have any final thoughts on the whole Zemo debate?
Zemo's awesome, man. I just love my villains. They're kind of like
debate. I'm pretty sure we all universally agree.
Everyone loves Zemo. I cannot wait to see more of this character overall. I think he's great. I think Daniel Bruhl is just awesome in the role. I think Marvel, they tend to make, these characters very like lovable, like no matter what. It's just so surprising that this is a villain that you can actually love. You know what I'm saying? But that kind of, it's a double side of the coin because he is a grounded, realistic kind of, you can actually, I don't know, you won't meet this guy, but he's a guy that you can actually see, you can talk to him. You can have an intelligent conversation. He's not out for one mission. He's out for a personal mission. And that's, whatever it is. So
he's like awesome, Jeff Bezos evil, not Thanos evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only he seems like way cooler to hang around than Jeff Bezos.
Well, hey, Jeff Bezos did get The Expanse back on air, so I can't hate him too much.
True,
I'm really enjoying that show.
I'm not talking about like his business canny. I'm talking about like his household manner, let's call it.
Sure. Yeah, I feel that. Well, guys, I think this was a great chat. Unless anyone has any final sentiments to add.
Star ratings.
Guess we don't. Star ratings. Cool. Yeah, we'll throw it to the guests first. Nick, man, why don't you take this one away? What's your star rating on this week's episode?
I'd give it like a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it that much. The only major setbacks for me, like I talked about, is there was some pacing issues. There were some things where it's like, yeah, you probably could have cut that down. And also the fact that I still feel like Marvel doesn't really understand or know how to kind of get to the plot of the actual villain at bay here. I think you wait a little too long, Marvel. That's it. I love you, but you just wait a little too long, I think, with your TV series. But yeah, 4 out of 5 for me.
Matt.
I'm gonna go 4 out of 5. I just love scenes like, even though it was slow, it was kind of, it wasn't slow. It was actually a cool part, but I just think the placement wasn't, it shouldn't have been more in the middle. I think it was great seeing Sam Wilson playing around with the shield, him messing around with it, and it like not being as experienced as Steve Rogers was. It was, it's great to see stuff like that, your superhero movies or shows.
Absolutely. Chris, your final star rating.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed it. I can't go quite as high as our guests here. I'm going to go with a 3 out of 5 because I do think that there was some pretty obvious fat that needed to be trimmed in the shape and form of the boat sequence and the Sharon Carter stuff, which we could have used maybe a little more of. And so while the moments that were special were great, that does hold it back for me. And so, yeah, 3 out of 5. What about you, Dom?
Yep, same rating, 3 out of 5. Ultimately, it is the length of the episode and the ultimate pace and what it builds to and what it amounts to in the series that hold this back for me. I thought that the first episode was kind of going to be the only kind of weak spot, but it kind of is annoying that it does have to be the penultimate episode that holds that unfortunate spot. So, yeah, 3 out of 5 for me.
Awesome, guys. Well, why don't you guys go ahead and tell the good people in our chat and in our audience where they can find you. We'll start with Nick, man. Tell them about what you do here on YouTube.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I'm Nick from Nick Talks Flicks. I do everything from movie reviews, rankings, marathons. I'm actually going to be having a 24-hour movie marathon next week. And I'm doing it with my good friend Nathan Hale. Last year we did it, and it was one of the most viewed videos on my channel. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also really tiring. But you can find me also on Instagram at Nick Talks Flicks if you want to follow me there. And come on over and check out the channel. I do also reviews of all of the MCU shows and all the Star Wars properties and things like that. So yeah, my review for this episode, my kind of constructed short-term thoughts of this episode will be up very shortly.
Hell yeah, man. Looking forward to it as always. And Matt, dude, let the people know what you're up to, man.
I pretty much do the same thing as everyone else does. I had some TV reactions. Of course, you guys can watch me watching the show, so that's fun to see. And I also do a live spoiler talk on this show too on Mondays with my good buddy Shamoon Reacts, who's a great YouTuber. He's great with the Marvel knowledge as well. So go ahead and check that out. And yeah, man, you can also follow me at Basic Entertain. That's Basic Entertainment on Instagram. You want to get a reach of me and more Basic Entertainment. And shout out to you guys for having me on once again. This was fun. Shout out to meeting Nick too for the first time. So that was great.
Yeah, thanks guys. This was a blast. So
of course, happy to have you guys on. You guys are always welcome, and of course, we'll see you both back next week for the grand finale. Before we plug ourselves, obviously, Chris, where can the good people find you?
Sure, yeah, you guys can find me, of course, here, but also at Christian Ivanko, anywhere that matters. Ivanko is spelled Evanko. I make music, which you can find through the links in all those various bios and descriptions. I have another podcast called Talking with Andrew and Chris, which is a show about life, music, and everything in between, and we quite literally talk about all of that. You can also find that in the links in the bios. Of course, talking spelled the way we do here. And Dom, what about yourself, man? Where can the people find you?
So I believe that I broke a record. I made 2 sarcastic Facebook posts today overall. So my initial quick bit thoughts after the Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 5 was, wait, WTF ? Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and why is she doing a Kate McKinnon impression at the time? And then I posted a picture of Christopher Lee later on with the title The Man, in which it basically says on his Wikipedia page that he witnessed the last public execution in France using a guillotine, almost married Swiss royalty, and he was even given permission by the King of Sweden, was the inspiration for James Bond, which was written by his step-cousin Ian Fleming, the only member of the Lord of the Rings cast to actually meet Tolkien and played in a heavy metal band. Christopher Lee was indeed the man. And you can find more sarcastic posts like that on my social media pages, Facebook and Instagram, at Movie Nerd Reviews. But more importantly, you can follow us on our Facebook and Instagram for this channel right here at Talkin' TV Podcast. No G. If you type that into Facebook and Instagram, you can keep track of everything that we're doing here on this channel, which we post on 7 days a week now in order to give to you people, the consumers overall, the most important. Our subscribers, you give us likes, you give us growth overall. You allow us to continue to keep the lights on that are totally not plugged in to the plugs over there. But seriously, thank you guys for continuing to come back to the channel. If you would like to continue to support the channel, please click the subscribe button, click the bell next to it, click the like button, leave a comment overall. Let us know.
I was looking for it. I couldn't find it.
Chris pulled a me right there because of the graphics that he had set up, and it's no biggie because you can find it all right below the page. Thank you once again. We'll see you guys next week for the Falcon and Winter Soldier finale. As always, for myself, from Matt, from Nick, from Chris, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies and TV. We'll see you guys next week, people.